welcome to my talk. I hope everyone is enjoying their day of security and had a good break for lunch if you're on the West Coast, and if you're on the East Coast or somewhere else, did something, also took a break. But yeah, so who turned up the heat map? An introduction to risk management and cybersecurity risk quantification. So before we get started, a little bit about me. I am the principal security quantitative analyst at Roblox. I am standing up the cybersecurity and technology risk management program for the enterprise. I was doing similar work prior to coming to Roblox at Capital One Financial, and then in a previous life, I was working as a statistician and a management analyst for the federal government. Okay, so enough about me, and let's get into the risk, which you all are here for. When I give talks, I like to warn people what they are in for so they can leave, no questions asked. So today we're going to be talking about the role of cyber risk management in a technology organization. And to give you a chance to experience what this looks like, we're going to go through a qualitative assessment, which is the heat map style, and assess the risk of a scenario. And then we're going to take that same scenario and do it quantitative style. Oops, I'm getting some chats. The session ended. Uh-oh. Thanks, Kim, for the heads up. Can you all hear me? Okay. Okay, so some folks are having some technical difficulties, so I appreciate the heads up, but we'll just keep going. Like I was saying, we're going to do two risk assessments, one qualitative, one quantitative, and then we are going to be doing a discussion of potential pros and cons of each of those methodologies. And I do want to give you some tips for implementing cyber risk quantification in your organization, because it's less common. And then if we have time, which hopefully we will, we can talk a little bit about the CRQ journey at Roblox. I want to call out that there is some media attached to this presentation. We are doing a risk scenario, like I said, so there's some files to download. It's in the media share section. If you click into that, you should be able to download the materials. They're also attached as a PDF file to the agenda. So if you pop over there, you can get it there as well. But there's materials to follow along when they do the risk assessment. And I'm going to warn you, we're going to go kind of fast. There's a lot to cover, and I get very excited about risk. But this is being recorded, and you can do it again at a slower speed. And also, if you have questions, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to answer anyone's questions. Okay. So hopefully you all have some interest in risk management, and that's why you're here. But a lot of people are really unfamiliar with risk management and its role, and see it as potentially a blocker. So the joke is, people like to say that risk management puts the no in innovation. I don't think about it like that. Honestly, in my mind, risk management is giving leaders data to drive decision making. We are empowering folks. We're a collaborative partner. That may not be a compelling enough reason to get excited about risk management, so I'm going to convince you to care. Honestly, everyone is a risk manager. And so what is risk management? And I can give you a textbook definition. It's the process of identifying, assessing, and affecting the risk to an organization that may cause negative financial, operational, regulatory, or reputational impacts. Now, that's a very by the book definition. So what does that mean on the ground? Honestly, it's going around and asking what could go wrong and figuring out how to manage it, and working with people on the front line who are doing the work to control risk. And regardless of your role in an organization, you are ultimately helping the business to achieve desired outcomes. So part of that is managing risk, whether it's explicit or implicit in your job. So that's why I say everyone has a role to play in risk management. Now, if you come away with nothing else from this presentation, I hope I can get you aligned on a definition of risk, because people use the term risk fairly loosely, and they mean it in different ways. But For risk assessment, we have to think about risk as not a person, a thing, or even an attack vector. It is a possible event, an event that includes a threat actor, an asset at risk, and an impact, but it's not just one of those things, it's all of those things. If you don't have all three elements, it's not a risk. So for instance, a hacker sitting alone in their basement, not targeting an organization is not a risk, they're just a threat. And then when we describe risk to leadership, we think about it most terms of likelihood and impact, meaning how frequently is it going to happen and what is the damage to the organization should the event occur. And this is where we get into better understanding risk and risk assessment. So we have two main types, and qualitative is the heat map style, the very colorful matrix you see. And that's what most organizations use to assess risk. And we describe risk using, well, descriptions. So we could say the risk of something is very high, meaning that it is likely to occur, and the impact would be severe. And we use this kind of matrix with likelihood and impact on each axis to figure out a rating, which is typically low, medium, high, critical, and it's described by those colors. Now, quantitative risk assessment, instead of describing things, we're estimating them with data inputs, usually a range, because we are still, doing our best to guess or estimate at a specific future event. So it's still, there's a bit of subjectivity involved, but we are using better data-driven inputs to do so. And then we run simulations using a model called Monte Carlo to derive the probable frequency of a risk event and an estimated range of the financial impact. And that's the real power of the quantitative risk assessment. We move from describing risks in terms of red or high to it's likely going to happen 4 times a year and it's going to cost you anywhere between $1 million and $8 million. Things like that, things that people can really anchor to and understand. Okay, so I promised we would actually do some risk assessment. So if you've downloaded the materials, I'd like you to take a look at them now, and we're going to walk through this. And again, I apologize for going quickly, but we've got a lot to get through. So we're starting with qualitative risk assessment because that's where organizations typically start. And we're going to use a non-technical scenario to do this because I just want you to work and stretch that risk assessment muscle versus getting hung up on the technical details or feasibility of the scenario I'm describing. So the organizational context is my life. I'm trying to adult, so I am buying a couch. I want to spend a lot of money on this couch. It's an investment piece for me. And so as a risk manager, what could go wrong? Well, I have a cat. So the combination of my asset and that cat means my couch could be damaged. So let's walk through a risk scenario. Okay, the first thing we do is we title our risk, my expensive couch is damaged. And then I use what's called a risk scenario where I describe what's happening in this possible event. And this helps me scope the risk in a manageable way. It describes what the risk is about, and then I can estimate against it. So we have this malicious insider, my cat, who's going to damage my couch using her sharp claws because she has uncontrolled access to the couch. I've not protected it in any way. And she is going to prevent me from sitting on it because it's damaged, so operational impacts there. And then I'm probably going to have to replace the couch if she damages it too badly. So there's financial impacts as well. All right, again, refer to your documents that you downloaded. And the first step of this is the inherent risk assessment. So what we do in the inherent risk assessment, it's like risk in the absence of controls. It's kind of a hard concept to understand, but I like to think about it as what is the risk to my asset when I haven't taken any direct or focused actions to prevent the risk event from occurring, or if the risk event occurs, lessening the damage. So I have this threat actor, my cat. She's not a lion, but she's a Maine Coon. So in my mind, that means she's both capable and motivated. And she's done this before to other furniture I've had. Maybe I'm a bit laissez-faire about getting her claws clipped so they're sharp and they're ready to go. And then here's the asset at risk. It's my couch. You can see it's in my very Spartan apartment. So it's a very attractive target and it's easy access for my cat. So when we do the assessment of inherent risk, we have to ask ourselves, what is the likelihood that my cat will damage the couch? And it's in the next year. And so I want to highlight the time boundedness of this assessment. If you think about things in terms of an infinite time frame, anything could happen. That's not useful in risk assessment. So we typically think about things in terms of a 1-year period. And then how bad is this damage going to be? So look at the description in your rating scale. And we're going fast, so I'm just going to give you the answer. But no controls, the couch is sitting in the middle of the living room. It's likely she's going to damage it. So it's probably going to occur in most circumstances. Now, in terms of the damage, this is where the art and the science comes into play. This is your best as a subject matter expert assessment of the impact. I don't think anyone's going to get injured from what she's going to do to the couch, but she's definitely going to do a number on it. So I'm going with extensive 3. And then we take those 2 scores and we align them on the matrix. And so I've got extensive 3, a likely 4. That gets us to this 7. And 7 aligns to high. So inherent risk is assessed at high. All right, excellent. So we've assessed the inherent risk of the scenario. It's high. This seems problematic to me. This is an expensive couch. I don't want it to get damaged. What do I do to bring the risk in the scenario down? I'm going to implement some controls to protect my asset. And once I do that, I can assess the strength of my controls. Taken together, it's called the control suite. And then I can see how much risk is left over. All right. So in your organization, you're going to have to pick controls, but there is such a thing as over controlling because you don't want to pick so many controls that it's prohibitively expensive or they get in the way of you using your asset or slowing down important business processes. So for example, if I put plastic all over that couch, yeah, it's going to be well protected, but it's not going to be comfortable to sit on anymore. So looking through the controls available to me, I'm going to pick a few that I think seem reasonable. I've got the kitty treadmill. It's going to slow her down, tire her out, give her something else to do. A scratching post. This is an attractive alternative target. I'm going to start clipping her nails better or paying someone else to do it. I got this cat bed. This is going to distract her a little bit, put her on the couch. Maybe she'll sleep there instead of attacking the couch. And then this scratch pad on the couch arms. Seems pretty self-explanatory what that does. So now I have a control suite. And I have to think about how effective are the controls in the control suite at reducing both the likelihood and the impact of this risk. So likelihood in the sense of reducing how often she's going to want to do this. And then the impact, if she does do it, is there any way I can reduce the damage that she's doing? And the risk effect that I've called out here, this indirect, direct category, all that means is some controls are better than other controls at addressing a particular risk. So for instance, the claw trimming is a direct control because I'm snipping down her claws. They're less sharp. She's going to do less damage. The cat treadmill is kind of indirect because I'm only hoping it tires her out, and instead of attacking my couch, she's sleeping. All right. So again, we take our rating scale. And I think based on the controls I've selected here in this suite, we've got a mix of direct and indirect, and they're addressing both likelihood and impact. Moderate seems like a reasonable assessment of the control suite. Okay, so we've done a lot of work here. We've done good work. We've assessed the inherent risk in the scenario, it's high. Now I've selected a series of controls to reduce the risk, and we're saying it's moderate. So after I implement them, what is left? Again, we take another matrix, another heat map, and we can figure out the amount of residual risk or uncontrolled risk left in the scenario. So again, we're going to align our inherent risk high, our moderate control suite effectiveness gets us to a 5. Now, I just want to call out here that this is not a mathematical calculation, and it's not meant to be. The numbers help you move along the matrix, but you shouldn't treat them as numbers. So don't perform math on these, like never add them up, never average them. It's beyond the scope of this course why you don't want to do that, but just trust me, even though we're using numbers here, it's not quantitative assessment. They're just really helping us move around a matrix. So like I said, we have residual risk is assessed at a medium 5 based on the inherent risk, the controls in place, and what's left over. Awesome. So now I can report this out. I went from a high risk to a medium risk. Now, I'm sure you guys can imagine if you're reporting this out to senior leadership, they might wonder, well, how much risk is medium? Is that a good level of risk? Do I need to do more? And this is where the power of the quantitative risk assessment really can come into play. We can start answering those questions. So the way we do quantitative risk assessment is we use a model that's called FAIR, the Factor Analysis of Information Risk. And we're not going to get into the nitty-gritty of this model, but I just wanted to show you what it looks like. What we do is we still think about the frequency of the event and the cost should the event occur, but we use data-driven estimates. We feed them into a model, we run a simulation 50,000 times, and then we get a pretty good estimate, a ranged estimate of the financial impact and the likelihood, the probability of this event occurring. So for this scenario, we're going to work at this bottom level of the risk model, and we're going to talk about the same things we just talked about. So how often is my cat trying to damage the couch? How vulnerable is the couch to her attempts at it? And then what's it going to cost me if she succeeds? So in a no control situation, I have made some assumptions about how motivated she is, meaning how often she's going to be attacking my couch. When she attacks, how successful she'll be, and then what it's going to cost me to replace the couch. So I take these numerical estimates and I pop them into my simulation or into my model, and I run 50,000 simulations. And shocker of shockers, in no controls, she is going to destroy my couch not once, but 16 different times. So I'll just keep replacing the couch and she's going to destroy it again and again. And that's going to cost me somewhere between around like $63,000 and $105,000. This is untenable to me. So I need to put some controls in place. And so the controls that I put in place are the ones we talked about earlier. But this time I've made some estimates about what they will actually do to her behavior. So I'm reducing how often she attacks. The couch is less vulnerable because there's alternative targets or she's sleeping on it. And then instead of me having to replace the couch every time, I can just do some repairs. So I put these numbers in, rerun the simulation, and now I have a much happier story. I've reduced the number of loss events, meaning the time she successfully attacks the couch, to 4 times a year. And because she's not completely destroying the couch every time, she's only damaging in it, which I can get fixed. It's only costing me $1,600 to $2,300 a year. Now, you can see where this is going. When I go to leadership with a risk scenario like this, I can tell them I reduced risk by approximately 98% for the cost of the controls, which was around $700. So I am able to, in a very understandable way, go from saying, you know, we have this medium residual risk to now there's a almost $200 reduction in risk for every dollar I spend on controls. And so this is the power of quantitative risk assessment. You are putting risk in dollar ranges, letting leadership know how often something may happen, and then showing the impacts of your controls. So those questions that we had before, how much is medium? This is medium. And then I can decide, do I want to put more controls in place? Do I want to reduce this risk further, or am I okay with it? So in sum, I don't want you to walk away thinking qualitative is useless, quantitative is the way to go. Both are important, both have use cases, and really they answer different types of questions. Not every risk needs to be assessed quantitatively. Not every risk needs to be assessed qualitatively. Think about the question you're trying to answer in your organization and pick the method that's most appropriate for that. Both are great, and we are using both at Roblox. And I just want to take a minute to touch on if you are looking to implement cyber risk quantification in your organization. It's less well known, so I would recommend you educate yourself and others on it. Become the subject matter expert. And by doing this, you're going to demystify the process and bring others on the journey with you. Lots of communication here. This is going to be new. People have been doing qualitative assessment likely their whole careers. So you're going to have to do some like PR to get people on board. Like, this is a new way we're doing it. And a really effective way of doing that is find an executive sponsor that can spread this message and is supporting what you're doing. That will go very far. And ultimately, enthusiasm and excitement are contagious. If you're excited about it, other people will be too. So I would highly recommend you just become an advocate for this methodology, and other people will come on board. And finally, we're doing risk management at Roblox. We're in the early phases of our information security risk management journey. But we have made a conscious decision that quantitative risk management is foundational to what we're trying to do. And so using that along with qualitative is the path we are choosing to take. Both methods are very powerful, and we see the value in both. If you want to learn more about risk management, there's a few resources that I'll recommend right off the bat, but if you reach out to me on LinkedIn, I can give you others. ISC Squared is a really terrific starting place for just risk management in cyber. NIST is, they wrote the book, the risk management framework, and then FAIR is the leading resource and the FAIR Institute for cyber security risk quantification. And so that should leave us a little time for questions, and I'm seeing a few in the chat. And so Vana is asking, what's the model you feed into? Yeah, so that is the factor analysis of information risk. That's the FAIR model. And you can find more information about that on the FAIR Institute's website. But it's the industry standard for cyber risk quantification. There's a lot of documentation around it. So if you just do a bit of Googling, you can find a lot of information about how that model works and the underlying assumptions of it, and start kind of playing with it. And I would say there's a lot of resources on the web in terms of like a downloadable Excel spreadsheet that you can use, that it'll run the simulations for you. You don't need to purchase an expensive software package if you just want to kind of see how it works. So definitely check out the FAIR Institute's website if you want to learn more about cyber risk. Yeah, excellent. So I definitely would recommend rewatching, because I know I spoke really fast, and we went through those assessments really quickly. So I'm not sure exactly the details of the YouTube channel, but I'm assuming the details will be on the Day of Security website. This will not be published to my own personal YouTube channel to address the question. The Day of Security channel will have this information. So definitely check it out there. And I just want to thank you all for attending. Risk management is a really critical part of technology organizations, but I think it's one of the less exciting ones. We're not pushing product, but I think we have an important role to play in, protecting people's data and ensuring, things work the way they're supposed to. How does this relate to CVSS scores? So, that's a really good question. If you're doing a qualitative assessment, you could factor in CVSS scores into a category that you consider when you make your qualitative assessment. And same with FAIR, you could incorporate it into your data inputs, like what informs your estimates, but there's not a direct like crosswalk of the CVSS into either assessment type. And I see we're over time. So unless there's any more questions, I will end this session, but thank you all for attending, and enjoy the rest of your day.